I read a statistic that really got under my skin. And I haven't been able to stop thinking about it ever since. I've been trying to kind of read and research as much as I can over the past couple of years in order to really get to grips with why it's affected me so much. What was the statistic? So apparently 53% of young people, that is people 16 to 22 apparently, would sooner give up their sense of smell than lose access to their smartphone or their laptop. Now that is really quite disturbing. The point that the survey was making was just how integral technology has become to us. And I suppose you can understand, particularly from a sort of a really young person's point of view, that this is integral to just about everything that they do. But of course, to contemplate losing one of your senses is an extraordinary thing. You only have 5. And of course, if you lose the sense of smell, you're also losing the sense of taste, because taste is essentially 90% smell, or at least kind of that's what the experience of flavor is made up from. So this is quite a big thing. Of course, it's a forced choice as well in this kind of survey, but I think it points to something bigger, and I've been trying to kind of dig underneath that to really find out what it is that strikes so deep at my core. The thing is, I think if you lose the sense of smell, you lose the sense of what's real and what's meaningful. Because smell is ubiquitous. We smell with every breath we take. With every breath, you take in the world and you commune with it. Now, you might not be aware of that, but believe me, you'll be aware if you lose the sense of smell, as so many anosmics talk about. We are physical chemical beings, immersed in a physical chemical world. Smells swirl all around us. We breathe them in, we take them into our bodies, and they emanate from us. Smell is in fact the first sense to develop from an evolutionary point of view. So if you think of a single-cell organism encountering and colliding with the world that it is in, each time it makes contact with a molecule, it's actually chemoreception that allows it to decide whether that encounter is good or bad. Should it consume this thing that it's encountered, or should it repel from it? And it is the same for us, this evaluation of good and bad. Our sense of smell kicks in from the moment that we're born. If you place a newborn child on its mother's chest, just minutes old, fresh from birth, it will be able to clamber to its mother's nipple, guided only by scent. So the neurons that we kind of developed the sense of smell from our olfactory neurons, in actual fact, predate the evolution of the brain. You could actually say that the brain develops out of the olfactory bulb in some of our most primitive ancestors, rather than being something that comes out of the brain. And from this point of view, it's clear that our sense of smell is deeply, deeply ingrained within us. Those neurons that activate the olfactory bulb actually are directly exposed to the atmosphere. So every time you breathe in and you smell something, whether it's the coffee in your hand, whether it's something that you're eating for lunch, a little bit of that thing is actually touching your brain, all right? And it's 2 synaptic connections that then reach to the deepest cortical structures. So you could say that I smell, therefore I think. And perhaps even more, I smell, therefore I think and feel. Because we've all had that extraordinary experience of smelling something that just immediately takes you back to some of the most intimate experiences of your life. And all of a sudden, you're in the midst of it all. This is called a Proustian moment in a lot of the literature, after Marcel Proust, who wrote so compellingly about the vast recollection, the vast structure of recollection that was unleashed when he sat down to eat a madeleine dipped in lime blossom tea, and all of a sudden, the whole context of his childhood kind of rose up in front of him. Now, most of us can't really describe those experiences or describe smells nearly as compellingly as he could. And that is because, despite the fact that there's this incredible link with our memories and our emotions, smell has a very weak link to language. And so we don't have enough words to really express what it is that we feel when we smell something. But just because it's unconscious and because you can't capture it in language doesn't mean it's not important. So I haven't brought anything with me to give you to smell. It would have been ideal to kind of actually hold this as some kind of immersive workshop. But in the limits kind of the space and time, we don't have that. But hopefully you will at least indulge me this. And to kind of just take a very deep breath through your nostrils. Now, you might not really be aware of what it is that you're smelling at all. So if you'll lift your hand, your right hand, please, to your face, and just sniff the back of it. Again, you might not be aware of what you're smelling because that's your own smell. But it might be that you washed your hands earlier and there's a faint, clean smell of soap. Perhaps you can still smell lunch on your hands. You probably won't be able to tell the scent of someone that you shook hands with earlier, even though I'm sure many of you have shaken a few hands today. But I can bet that all of you lifted your hand to your face after you had that handshake and you sniffed that person out. Now, I know you hardly believe me, but there's a wealth of research to show that that's exactly what people do. And the problem is we don't really know very much about the sense of smell. It's been ignored. We haven't really studied it, largely because it was seen as kind of an animal sense. You know, it's something that, that belongs to our base and primal kind of selves. And so the research really has been quite scant. So even though we know that that behavior is there, we actually don't know what it is that we're smelling when we kind of sniff other people out. But we do know plenty of other things. So sex and dating are highly mediated by all of the chemo signals that we send out. So people are more attracted to people different to themselves, that have a different immunotype, specifically. And the reason? It increases your chance of sexual reproduction and the success of that. Interestingly, when women go on the pill, that actually shifts. And they become more attracted to people similar to themselves. And they believe that the reason for this might be that because the pill basically tricks your body into thinking that it's pregnant, that women then prefer nurturing relatives over who might actually have been kind of a better sort of choice for the biological fatherhood. So we're interrupting lots of these things all the time. And we live in a very, very sterilized kind of environment that is, I guess, messing with some of these chemo signals that we really don't understand. The sense of smell, in particular, connects us to nature and to the natural world. And I mean that in the sense that the molecules to which your olfactory bulb are sensitive are compounds of organic material going through changing conditions. So they are particularly attuned to whether something is ripe or whether it's rotting, whether it is blooming and blossoming or whether it is decaying or diseased. And in this, it also connects us with our deepest pleasures. So people who lose their sense of smell actually find that they land themselves in a serious depressive state. So for those people who think that they might be willing to lose their sense of smell first, this is often a surprising fact, that even more than losing sight, depression is a feature of that loss. And it's not just a case of being depressed about losing the sense of smell. It's much deeper than that. And it goes back to the kind of the evolutionary development of this sense that we share in common with so many other life forms on the planet. So when you can't smell anymore, you lose the emotional charge of life. You're not connected to all of those kind of pleasure sensations. Granted, you won't have all of the kind of awful ones as well, which tend to be what people kind of focus on. But the thing is that that connection between losing your sense of smell and developing depression actually runs the other way as well. People who are depressed also have a deficit in their sense of smell. And interestingly, it is a part of many other disorders and dysfunctions. So it is often a really early precursor to Alzheimer's disease, to Parkinson's, and And they've also found that it is actually a really interesting new way of diagnosing autism as well as schizophrenia. So to be robbed of the sense of smell is to be robbed of our nature. So if we return to that statistic, that 53% of young people would sooner give up their sense of smell than access to technology. It's not just that I'm upset about the fact that it's losing the sense of smell. The assumption here is also that technology will kind of make up for it somehow. Because it's not to say that people would choose the sense of smell to be the first one that they lose. It's not just that. It's the fact that we might be entering into a world in which actually we don't have much of a choice. We're rapidly building a digitally mediated world in which there is a radically reduced role for the sense of smell. Smell cannot be digitized, or at least I don't think so, and not yet. But in some sense, you have to ask yourself, why would you even, if it's such a clear connection between us as physical chemical beings in a physical chemical world? And actually, we sort of see some of the effects of this already. I mean, I have to wonder about online dating, where the terrible odds. How many first dates do people have to go on to afterwards only lament, it's no chemistry? And then you think of compulsive social media usage, where we are connected to so many people and bonded to none. There is no video, sort of video call replacement for the handshake or the subsequent hand sniff. We don't quite know what it is that we're losing yet, but it is likely to get worse. I hope you'll remember the film Inception, at least some of you, to go along with this with me. But in the film, Leonardo DiCaprio talks about this totem that he has. And the totem is to help him recognize whether he is in reality or in someone else's dream. It's a little spinning top. And basically, he spins it with the idea that if it keeps spinning, he's in someone else's dream. And if it topples over, it's in his own. So I'd advise you, if ever you think that you're already living in the simulation, stop and smell the roses. Smell confirms I am in this world. Smell confirms I am of this world. I am here. Physical, chemical, embodied being. With every breath, the opportunity to reconnect to the deepest parts of yourself and the world around you. Thank you.